What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we are tantalizingly close to the release of Worlds Collide. The new Keyforge set comes out on Friday, so what we're doing this week is looking at all the new cards from Worlds Collide, not the reprints, but all the new cards, so you can be nice and prepared when they come around. So let's continue our look today by having a gander at Shadows, and we'll start off with a Vinder. A 4-power, 0-armor creature, and when you reap, you deal 1 damage to a creature, but then if you destroy the creature with that damage, your opponent discards a random card from their hand. This reminds me quite a lot of Gongoozle, because Gongoozle did 3 damage, and if it didn't destroy, then your opponent had to discard a random card from their hand. Here, the goal should be destroy a creature, then you get to destroy them, and then you get to have your opponent discard a random card from their hand. That sounds pretty good to me. Breaker Hill, a 1-power, 0-armor creature, so rather weak, but you do get elusive, so the first time you're attacked, nothing happens. Each turn. And each of Breaker Hill's neighbours gains action, Steel and Amber. Now this is really good. Breaker Hill itself, 1 power, 0 armor, you're basically going to have to sit there and reap, which is fine, but it's not exactly game breaking. But in theory here, if you can keep this on the field for a little while, then Breaker Hill is giving you 2 creatures with the action Steel and Amber. And it's not like we've never seen a Shadows creature with the action Steel and Amber. We got stuff like Yancy Gang that just steals an Amber as an action. This could be an awful lot of fun. This gives you stealing. And look, stealing is one of the things that Shadows does well. It's not surprising that we've got stealing here, but it's very nice that we do. Hit and Run is an action card, and when you play it, you deal 2 damage to a creature, and then return a friendly creature to your hand. Cool. Dealing 2 damage to a creature is quite nice, because it means that you can, well, it's just cheeky damage, right? It's cheeky damage. But I can confirm that, for instance, Ronnie Wristclocks is in Worlds Collide. So what you should be trying to do here, you play Ronnie Wristclocks, Steel and Amber, 2 if your opponent has 7 or more. And then, I mean, imagine if your opponent's got 9 Amber. You play Ronnie Wristclocks, you steal 2 Amber. You then play Hit and Run, deal 2 damage to one of your opponent's creatures, return Ronnie Wristclocks to your hand, play him again to steal another 2 Amber. Yeah. Then your opponent goes down from 9 to 5. It's a way to make a living. Hawk is an action card that gives you an Amber bonus, and when you play it, destroy an artifact. If you do, gain an Amber. So maybe you just get 1 Amber and nothing else, but this is artifact control, and it's really nice artifact control. It destroys an artifact, you don't have to worry. I mean, something like Barehanded, your opponent can just replay the artifact next turn. This gets rid of it entirely, and you gain an Amber, so essentially playing Hawk just turns into gain 2 Amber. If there's any artifact you're ever worried about, this is going to be rather spectacularly wonderful. Hugger Mugger, a 3-power, 0-armor creature with elusive, which is nice. And when you play it, you capture an Amber, nice Amber control. And if your opponent has more forged keys than you, you also steal an Amber. So once it's played, you just got a 3-power elusive creature, but what I adore here is that you're capturing an Amber and stealing an Amber, or at the very least just capturing. And yeah, fine, your opponent can destroy Hugger Mugger and get the Amber back, but that still doesn't help them at the beginning of their next turn when they're trying to forge a key. When played down, this could essentially take 2 Amber out of your opponent's pool, and we see with stuff like Ronnie Wristclocks that can be huge. Inky Gloom is an action card. When you play it, your opponent cannot use creatures to reap on their next turn. And of course, this should remind you both thematically and in terms of what it does, of Fogify. Fogify was one of them, there are logos cards in Call of the Archons, and this actually stopped your opponent using creatures to fight. This stops your opponent using creatures to reap. Now, interesting side note, Fogify had an Amber bonus, this doesn't, meaning that essentially reaping is more important than fighting, because otherwise it would have an amber bonus too. And it's just a way of going, my opponent's got a large battle line full of creatures. They're going to be reaping their way to victory. We've all had games like that, where you've got enough creatures you can just reap to victory. This is a way of stopping it. As a side note here, do remember that if you're stopping your opponent reaping, then they're going to be able to fight, and if they've got a large battle line, that could go badly for you. J-Vinder, not to be confused with A-Vinder, is a 2-power, 0-armor creature with elusive, and when you reap, you deal 1 damage to a creature, and if it destroys that creature, steal an amber. It is literally half as good as A-Vinder, but you do gain elusive. Half the power, half the damage. Having said that, you steal an amber rather than making your opponent discard a card from their hand, so I like it a fair bit more. Stealing is good. Keyforge Eclipse is an action. When you play it, you shuffle each flank creature into its owner's deck. So your opponent loses their flank creature, so they can't use them on their next turn. Again, this is really good if you combine it with something like Ronnie Wristclocks, a creature that you want to replay. So you play Keyforge Eclipse, and then Ronnie's back in your deck to use again. The thing is, a lot of the time, getting rid of your opponent's flank creatures is going to hurt them because they've just 2 creatures down for fighting and reaping and actions. But a lot of the time it's going to hurt you as well, so you need to try and manipulate this so you've got creatures on your flank, which you'd rather have back in your deck ready to play in the future. Mug. Ironically, mugging with a mug, I appreciate that, is an action with an amber bonus, and when you play it, you move 1 amber from a creature to your pool and deal 2 damage to that creature. So if your opponent has captured an amber, you move it to your pool and you deal 2 damage to them. If you're playing against a Saurian Republic and they've exalted to put amber on them, you move it to your pool, deal 2 damage to that creature. But what's really cool here is if you've captured amber, or you've exalted one of your creatures, you can move that amber to your pool. Remember, your opponent should get the amber on that creature when they destroy it, but if you move it to your pool first, you get it. Yeah, you have to deal 2 damage to your own creature, but you gain the amber when you play it, and then you get to take a captured amber and put it in your pool rather than letting your opponent have it. That seems absolutely worth the 2 damage to me. Pestering Blow is an action that gives you an amber bonus and reads, when you play, deal 1 damage to a creature and enrage it. So again, you've got that rage mechanic going on here that forces your opponent to fight with a creature rather than reap or use their action, and then they get to remove the rage counter. When you enrage a creature, you put a rage counter on, they have to fight next time, and then they remove it. Deal a damage, enrage them, grab an amber. Again, you need to be a little bit careful. You're not forcing your opponent to attack with a creature that's then going to take out one of yours, but it's still kind of fun. Simon, 1 power, 0 armor with skirmish, which is to say when you start a fight, you will survive the fight. And when you fight and survive, which you will because you've got skirmish, you put the creature Simon fights on top of its owner's deck. Don't do this against something like Time Traveler, where your opponent's going to get an amber bonus and draw 2 cards. But do it against something like Khalifi Dragon, which can only be played if your opponent has 7 amber or more and is extremely difficult to get into play. Be on the lookout for coming into play abilities and amber bonus. But remember, when the creature is played, it comes into play exhausted, so best case scenario, your opponent plays it next turn, and then it's exhausted and they get it the next turn. And bearing in mind, right, let's say you put a Brobnar creature on top of their deck. If they choose Brobnar the next 2 turns, they're 2 turns away from being able to use it. If they don't, it's more. Trust No One is an action card. When you play it, you steal an amber. If there are no friendly creatures in play, you instead, not as well as, steal 1 amber for each house represented among enemy creatures, up to a maximum of 3. So this can never steal more than 3. You don't get to steal 1 and then steal 3. If you've got no friendly creatures in play, you can hopefully steal 3 amber. But this isn't an alpha or omega card. So what you can do here is just play this, do the stealing, then play all of your creatures. We adore Swindled, which gives you free amber stolen, but being an alpha and omega card means it's all you do on your turn. This can steal the same amount of amber while letting you do a bunch of other stuff. That's pretty awesome. Chain Gang is a creature, 3 power, 0 armor, and after you play Subtle Chain, you ready Chain Gang, and it's got an action which steals an amber and shuffles a Subtle Chain from your discard pile into your deck. So this works really quite nicely. Play it down, oh no, it's exhausted, boo! Then you play Subtle Chain to ready it and steal an amber right now. We've talked about how good stealing is. And then you shuffle Subtle Chain back into your deck, and hopefully you draw it again on your next Shadow's turn. So you use the action to steal, play Subtle Chain to ready, then use the action again to steal. That's pretty awesome. We should mention Subtle Chain quickly while we're here. Go slightly out of order for a moment. It is an action that gives you an amber bonus, and your opponent discards a random card from their hand. So while you're getting extra uses of a creature that's stealing amber, you're also making your opponent discard random cards from their hand. That's a fun combo. Fidget is a 2 power, 0 armor creature with elusive, so a little bit of staying power. When you reap, you discard a random card from your opponent's archives or the top card of their deck. But if it's an action card, you play it as if it were yours. You get to play one of your opponent's action cards. Now again, it's only if you hit an action card, but this is a reap skill, so you can do it on every Shadow's turn. Hopefully sooner or later you'll hit one. Back in Age of Ascension, I had a lot of fun personally with Merkins. Now when you play Merkins, you get to choose a random card in your opponent's archive or the top card of their deck, and play it regardless of what it is. This is only an action, but it's a very similar thing, and it's every turn when you reap, not just the one turn you play, and for that reason, I love it. Into the Knight, which is teasing us a little bit, because it's clearly got a Sanctum creature on it, even though Sanctum isn't in Worlds Collide. It is an action card, and when you play it until the start of your next turn, non-Shadows creatures cannot be used to fight. Well, that's very cool. Now, bearing in mind here, not long ago I showed you Inky Gloom. Your opponent cannot use creatures to reap on their next turn. If you're able to pull off the combo of both of these cards, your opponent can fight with Shadows creatures and use actions. That's a deck that I want, frankly. No Safety in Numbers is an action card that gives you an amber bonus. And when you play it, you deal 3 damage to each creature that belongs to a house that has 3 or more creatures in play. So if there are 4 Logos creatures in total, each of them take 3 damage. But if there are 2 Saurian creatures, none of them take any damage. This is another one of those that you've got to time correctly. What you don't want to do here is play this when you've got lots of creatures from the same house and your opponent doesn't. And 3 power is enough to KO, destroy quite a lot of creatures. But if played at the right time, this could be huge. Spike Trap is an artifact that gives you an amber bonus, and it's got an Omni ability, meaning you can use it regardless of your active house. You sacrifice it and deal 3 damage to each flank creature. Okay. Now remember, that is yours and your opponent's. And this is weirdly familiar to Long Fused Minds in that it's kind of the opposite. So Long Fused Minds, Omni ability, amber bonus, sacrifice it, 3 damage to each enemy creature not on a flank. This is each creature, yours and your opponent's, that is on a flank. Be very careful that you've got to take the damage as well. This is one of those cards you've got to time properly. Whisper is a 3 power, 0 armor creature with elusive, and it's got an action whereby you lose an amber and destroy a creature. And this is a risk-reward thing. You're giving up an amber to destroy a creature. Anytime your opponent's got a creature that's really annoying you, no matter how powerful it is, how much armor it's got, unless it's got a ward counter, of course, in which case that would make it survive. But as long as it doesn't have a ward counter, lose an amber, get rid of it. It's an action, not a reap or a fight, so you can just ignore it and never use it. But this could come in super handy. Finch Cloak is a 4-power, 0-armor creature, and when you fight or reap, if you've got less amber than your opponent, you steal 1. Otherwise, each player gains an amber. Now, this is fight and reap, so the only way to avoid this is to just not use the creature. Or give it an upgrade that has an action, and then use that. But that's not going to happen very often. If you've got less amber than your opponent, it's great, you steal 1. If you've got more amber than your opponent, you still gain an amber, but so does your opponent. And one thing that is very much worth pointing out here, this is on your turn. So let's say your opponent's got 5 amber. If you play this, you put your opponent up to 6 amber, and that might put them on check to forge a key at the beginning of their next turn. You've been warned. Gambling Den. It is an artifact that gives you an amber bonus, and at the start of each player's turn, they may choose a house. If you do, reveal the top card of your deck. If it is of the house you named, you gain 2 amber, otherwise you lose 2 amber. Now, on the one hand, this gives you a 1/3 chance of gaining 2 amber and a 2/3 chance of losing 2. But on the other hand, it doesn't really, because you're going to know how many cards from each house are in your discard pile, in your hand, and on the board. So you'll be able to actually calculate how many cards of each house are remaining in the deck. Do so quickly, no one likes slow playing. The thing to remember here is, if you can pull this off, it's totally worth it. If you've got no amber, give it a go. You've got no amber to lose. You literally have nothing to lose, so go for it. But this is a 2-sided artifact, your opponent can use it as well. Hunter or Hunted is an action card with an amber bonus, and when you play it, you ward a creature or move a ward from a creature to another creature. Now, when it says from a creature to another creature, essentially either you ward one of your own or you take ward off of your opponent and give it to you. I love this because it gives you an amber bonus and lets you ward one of your creatures. I adore this because actually it doesn't just do that. At its best, it gives one of your creatures ward while taking it away from your opponent while giving you an amber, and that sounds pretty gosh darned lovely to me. Keyforgery is an artifact that gives you an amber bonus, and when your opponent would forge a key, they name a house. You reveal a random card from your hand. If that card is not of the named house, you destroy Keyforgery and they do not forge that key, but no amber is spent. They get the amber back. How cool is this? Your opponent has to guess essentially a card in your hand, and unless they get it right, they don't get to forge a key. If you can get this as a 2 or 3 of in a deck, and I don't know if you can, but if you can, oh lordy, that's going to be fun. Manchego is a 3-power, 0-armor creature. When you play it, if you have 5 or fewer cards in your deck, you steal 2 amber. And when you fight or reap, you may shuffle it into your deck. Now, this is going to be a very interesting one. Timing is everything here. There are going to be some games where you draw into it and you've got 5 or fewer cards left in your deck. Yay, steal 2 amber. Other times, you're going to have to wait. The good news is when you fight or reap, you may shuffle it into your deck. It is not something you have to do. So you do have the opportunity here of, unless your opponent destroys it, of course, waiting until you've got a very small deck, then shuffling it in so that you're massively increasing the chances of pulling it off. We've talked about Ronnie a couple times here. Stealing 2 amber is good. The Quiet Anvil is an artifact with an amber bonus, and it says that keys cost -2 amber. That is both for yourself and your opponent. After a player forges a key, you destroy the Quiet Anvil. Now, this is actually the opposite to a logos card that we looked at in the video probably yesterday, maybe earlier today. We'll have to have a look. But Universal Keylock, which said that keys cost +3 amber, and after a player forges a key, you destroy it. Now, this one's harder to use. Universal Keylock, you can play it down when you know your opponent's going to forge a key. The Quiet Anvil, you have to be very careful. You can play it down knowing your opponent cannot forge a key at the start of their turn, but maybe they drop something like a key charge during their turn. Or maybe they don't forge a key, but you also don't forge a key. It might end up helping your opponent more than you. It is a very risky card. Every house in Keyforge has a leader in Worlds Collide, and Shadows get the Shadow Council, a 3-power, 0-armor creature with elusive, and while it is in the center of your battle line, it has an action that steals 2 amber. Not 1, 2. Stealing 2 amber is nuts. We've said that a couple of times here. And it needs to be in the center of your battle line in order for this to fire. But the wonderful thing is, it doesn't need to be in the center of your battle line at a particular time. It is any time during your turn. Get it in the center of your battle line at some point during your turn, steal 2 amber, and if it's not in the center of your battle line at the end of your turn, nobody cares. This is awesome. Weesand? Yeah. 1 power, 0 armor card with both deploy and elusive. Now, deploy, we don't get many deploy cards in Worlds Collide, but essentially it means you can put it anywhere you like in your battle line. Now, at any time, if it ends up on a flank, it gets destroyed. After a player forges a key, you gain 2 amber. And it is a player forges a key. Not you, not your opponent, anybody. You gain 2 amber every time anybody forges a key, but it's a 1 power, 0 armor creature, and if it ever ends up on a flank, it gets destroyed. So there's going to be a fun little back and forth here as your opponent tries to manipulate this to be on a flank. Now, maybe they're lucky and they've got something like a quantum finger tap, which lets you swap 2 creatures in a battle line. That's an easy one. Or otherwise, they're just going to have to try and destroy creatures next to it so it ends up on a flank. And you're trying to keep it not on a flank, so you keep getting amber after amber after amber. Cool. And finally, there are 6 plants that we see, and they all do the exact same thing. So if we look at Brobnar plant, 1 power, 0 armor with elusive. After a player chooses Brobnar as their active house, you gain an amber. So if your opponent chooses Brobnar, you get an amber. If you choose Brobnar, you get an amber. And these are special rares, so I believe they do appear. So if you've got Brobnar plant, you will have Brobnar as one of your other 2 houses. And then there's Dis plant that gives you an amber when someone chooses Dis. Logos plant that gives you an amber when someone chooses Logos. Saurian plant that gives you an amber when someone chooses the Saurian Republic. Although it's weird that it reads chooses Saurian as their active house, it should be chooses the Saurian Republic. Star Alliance plant that gives you an amber when someone chooses Star Alliance, should be the Grand Star Alliance. And Untamed plant, which gives you an amber when somebody chooses Untamed, and looks right out of Mario on top of his head there. My point is, there's one for every house, and when somebody chooses that house, you gain an amber. You or your opponent. However, we do not have plants for Mars and Sanctum because they're not in Worlds Collide. So against non-Worlds Collide decks, these will be a little bit less good. There we go. Those are all the new Shadows cards from Worlds Collide, ladies and gentlemen. And I'd like to know what you think about them and what your favourites are. So let me know in the comment section. Go nuts. Be nice. Also, shout out to decks of Keyforge.com, who have done a wonderful job collating all the spoilers together into one place. Those guys are awesome. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wossy, where we talk Keyforge and any other games that take our fancy. And do please consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, etc. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would you? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wossy Plays.